Hi, it is really great to be with you all this morning. My name's Tim Anderson, team leader of the Ignite Network, serving churches in market towns and smaller locations across here in the east of England. Guys, I am loving the stories and the news that I'm hearing from yourselves in Newmarket. I'm loving just the caring environment, the energy in terms of reaching out at this time. There's no way that you could ever be said that Newmarket Community Church is closed at this time. But I want to encourage you to keep pressing into the prospects that are coming down the line for you, the new opportunities that are emerging, and just being that collaborative community together that really makes a difference. Because this is what I want to share with you today, because I believe we're in a season now that isn't just about the few, it's about everyone getting to play on the pitch. And I want to share with you today some fresh thinking I've recently had around thinking about the church being a continued expression of Jesus in the very broken world in which we find us. So let's lean in and let's catch up with this message for today. Today we're going to be touching on chapter 4, verses 1 to 16, which is Paul's manifesto for the church. Ephesians has often been known, as we know, as the book that represents some best thinking on the church. And oh my goodness, when church is at its best, it is magnificent. One of the challenges, I think, of the church in the West is that 80% of the work is being done by only 20%. And from the beginning of the church, right back in its conception, church was never meant to be about being a consumer or a spectator. It was designed to be a team sport, a place where everybody gets to play on the pitch. None of us are in the terraces. We have all been given a part to play. But as Christianity, particularly in the 3rd century with Constantine and with ritualism and formality came and power came, the power got sucked into the professional priesthood, and then the laity were very much stuck into the pews. But this is not God's design for his church. One of the other traits of, I think, the Western church's dysfunctionality is how we've ended up calling church leaders pastors, and with the whole notion that the church, that the leadership role is about looking after people and really, really good teaching. We celebrate those two, but those two celebrated ministries of the pastor who will always come round to have cups of tea, to look after the flock, to teach well on a Sunday, only bring out two aspects of the full-blooded and blown ministry of Jesus. And we've ended up with a church that is really well fed and is really well pampered, but it is tragically inward focused, and therefore it isn't growing in the West in the way that I think Jesus wants his church to be designed to be. And so when we come to this passage in Ephesians chapter 4, Paul gives us, I think, an incredible window into the gift that Jesus gave to his church. Now, I don't know whether you've ever been given a really useful gift, but there's nothing like receiving a gift that may have come as a bit of a surprise, but ended up being so useful. I don't know if you can think of anything like that. Well, this Christmas, Max and his girlfriend Anna-Marie gave me an amazing set of drawing pens, and it's so good. I just get to do line drawing, sketching, right with ink, right committing to the page. And you've got so many different types. You've got thin nibs, brush-like nibs, and you can do so much. And when they all work together, you come to have a really amazing picture. Not to say that my art is absolutely amazing, but I do love sketching. And this is a bit like when Jesus came. He gave a gift in his resurrection and his ascension to the church. And this gift is known as the Ephesians 4:11 ministries. And it's important because he's about to describe 5 different gifts that he has given to his church to continue a reflection of his ministry and his life. And the problem is we have separated those 5. We've often individualized these 5 ministries and callings and functions when Jesus designed them to work together in one heart-beating symphony. Just like my sketch pens all work together to make a great picture. And so what is the special gift that Jesus gave to his church? I just know that you're on the edge of your seats waiting to find out. Well, let's go to Ephesians 4 verse 7 to 11, and it says, "Yet grace, i.e. God's undeserved favor, was given to each of us not indiscriminately, but in different ways, in proportion to the measure of Christ's rich and abundant gift. Therefore," it says, "when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive, and he bestowed gifts on men." Now, this expression, "he ascended," what does it mean except that he also had previously descended from the heights of heaven into the lower parts of the earth? He who descended is the very same as he also who has ascended high above all the heavens, and that his presence might fill all things, that is, the whole universe. And his gifts to the church were varied, and this is what he has given to his church. He himself appointed some as apostles, that is special messengers, representatives, some as prophets who speak a new message from God to the people, some as evangelists who spread the good news of salvation, and some as pastors and teachers to shepherd and guide and instruct. So Paul continues that Jesus gave these 5 gifts, and you can think about them on your hand. The apostle, the prophet, the evangelist who calls in everybody above. Thirdly, ring finger, the shepherd or the pastor, the covenant relationship, and then the teacher, who brings balance. And I understand you can remember this because I think if you cut off your little finger, you wobble around and you can't walk in a straight line. Is that right? Never tried it myself, but the little finger brings a sense of balance and instruction. And so the Ephesians 4:11 ministries of the apostle, prophet, evangelist, teacher, and shepherd and teaching roles, what are the intrinsic gifts? And I think this is very, very exciting because what I want to tell you and share with you this morning is some new development of thinking, because we've often seen these as callings. Like there's the Billy Graham evangelist, there's the mighty apostles that are heading up networks of churches and are at the top of the pyramid, or the great pastors and all these staggering Bible teachers that stand at the lectern with their Bible and just expound phenomenally, and we just go wow, and it just seems so other from us. But you see, these callings, and they do show up in some of our lives in concentrated callings and important ways, but also they are for functions. And why do they exist? Well, he goes on to say that Jesus appointed some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. Why? For the equipping, the perfecting, the mending, the perfect joining together, the putting in order, the strengthening, the compelling, the fulfilling and healing of the saints for the work of ministry. And what's really interesting is if you think about these 5 ministries, I think they all perfectly reflect something of the ministry and the dynamic of who Jesus is and was, and his ministry on the earth. He was apostolic. Now, what does the apostolic mean? It's an advancer. It's someone who breaks new ground, who brings something of another dimension into the here and the now. Someone who creates and constructs and orchestrates. And you can see these traits, I think, as archetypes within the very personalities and dimensions within the whole of creation. So the apostolic is also can be seen as being something of the entrepreneurial, something of that of leadership that brings other people into other people into a place, in a sense of purpose and a sense of order. And then we see the operation of the prophetic, which is a ministry. Just finding my notes here. So just going back to the apostolic, the role of the apostle is one who guards, who knows the DNA and knows what's looking to be brought out in a church, in an organisation, maintains that sense of sentness. Has a translocal sense of a networker that can bring things together, sense of pioneering, of church planting. And often we see this in church planters, missional leaders, pioneers, organizational designers, networkers, innovators. And just as I say something about this, there's something in you that just loves to pioneer new things, to bring things together to a place of order, of synchronicity and of effectiveness. And you just bring a touch to that within your life, within your ministry, within your job, within your work. And there's something of that apostolic dynamic about your life. And we see that in Jesus. But not only was Jesus apostolic and bring sense of the kingdom of heaven here on earth and starting a global movement, we also see that he was incredibly prophetic, and he brought something of heaven here to earth. The role of the prophet or the prophetic ministry maintains covenant relationship with God and relationship with others. They're passionate about justice, about righteousness. They have a holy discontent. They'll often contend and ask difficult, awkward questions to stir up, because they are compelling us to something higher, to something more. There's a sense of social justice that runs through the veins of the prophetic. And a holy passion and a passion for prayer, and there's a very strong prophetic heartbeat, and we see this in the heart and the life of Jesus. Then thirdly, we see that role of the evangelist as the one who stands above and calls others to God, and they cultivate an attractive culture. They broadcast the vision. They are storytellers. They're able to enter people into steps to coming to know Jesus. They will talk about the latest thing. They have the gift of the gab. Often recruiters, storytellers, communicators, apologists, entrepreneurial as well. They like to be out there connecting and embracing and bring people on the journey. And there's a sense there that the evangelist, you can see that in the sales, in salespeople, they just can't help telling some good news about a good product or a good find. And evangelists have that running in their DNA. And you don't have to be a Billy Graham to be an evangelist. You can just be someone that just loves sharing about Jesus with other people. It just comes so naturally to you. You find yourself chatting with someone at the bus stop, or at the checkout at the till, and people will feel warm and comfortable around you. And so that's something of the ministry of Jesus. He was an evangelist. Fourthly, we see that the shepherding, pastoring role that cultivates community. that has that strong sense of inclusiveness, of family culture, that brings that sense of social glue, the developing the organizational's EQ, emotional literacy and abilities to be able to connect the family together, to care for people, to look out, to come alongside and to nurture. These can often show up within our culture as community workers, protectors, spiritual directors, caregivers, and they find themselves playing in so many different roles, and that may be how you feel about your role in life, and that's just something that you feel comes so naturally to you. It was a big part of who Jesus ticked and how he lived. And fifthly, the role of the teaching gift, and as an office, and also as a function within the church, it's the role that fosters learning. It has an educational sense of process. It loves that role, loves to give tools and resources to other people to help them grow. You love theologicalizing, and understanding is important to you, and to be able to understand and help others understand. Often this streak and this strain shows up in people moving into teaching roles, philosophers, theologians, guides, coaches, educators, researchers, and I think that's such an important trait that comes to build and to nurture. And also that was a key part of Jesus' ministry. He was a phenomenal communicator. He was a teacher, both on the grand scale, but also was able to equip individuals and a small group around him with the things of the kingdom. And so what I'm hoping you're getting a picture here is that all five are vital, I think, for the church to be flourishing in all these five functions, to be what I think is a healthy church. And it's not just that we need to be pastoral and teaching. They're great, but we're just going to blob and get fat and be lovely. But we're not going to have movement and dynamic, and we're not going to fulfill the mission and the mandate to reach a broken world. And yet, if we're all about rah, 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 out there, and we're not caring for people, and we're not coaching and training and making disciples, then we're equally incomplete. And so this is why we need one another. We're designed to be a team together, to be church together in this way. And I think Paul had three convictions. I believe that he believed that every person has been given a grace gift, and we can function in these five flows within our own worlds, within our own lives, within our small group, within our church life, within our work life, that we have, and we will have strengths in some of these five areas. But just because I might be stronger in the apostolic and the prophetic doesn't mean that gives me any right to then diss and not love people around me or not care for people. But in my role as a team leader, I actually end up being a bit of a psychologist, being a bit of a counselor, being a bit of a shepherd, a bit of a pastor, and I need to hone my skills around those things. Just as a church, we will have strengths in some of these five Ephesians 4 or 5:11 ministries, but others might be weaker, and we need to strengthen ourselves in those things. Why? To be a fully healthy reflection of Jesus in this world. So I believe Paul believed that each of us have been given a grace gift around one of these Ephesians 4:11 ministries. And we were never designed to live in the pew. We were always designed to be playing on the pitch. And which one of these five do you bring? Have you disengaged yourself because you don't see yourself being particularly effective? Or, well, I'm not a Billy Graham, therefore I just can't really be an evangelist. That's not true. We all have an ability to be able to share the good news of Jesus. And some of us just have a grace on us to be able to be even more effective in those areas to help, and that will help inspire others and lift our game. I don't know if you've ever seen, I've been reminded of just in that moment of, when Gareth Bale plays with his national team. It's like he's so strong in his abilities on the pitch that his presence raises the game of everyone else. And you see, if I begin to show up with my strongest gifts within my small group, that is going to begin to raise the game and the temperature of everyone else within that area. And someone else, and we've got one person in our small group, and she's amazing. She keeps notes like how we're all doing and what comes up. And then it just out of a really loving, natural way, she just, next time we're together, she says, oh, Louise, how are you doing on this? And Tim, how are you doing on that? And I'm like, wow, I've been remembered. I've been cared about. And that thoughtfulness, that carefulness just lifts the dynamic within community and reflects as something of the heartbeat of God. And so this is very cool when we all get to play. And we were not designed just to be a consumer or a spectator. We were designed to be on the pitch. And then thirdly, Paul believed that each of us has a function to play in continuing the vibrant, effective ministry of Jesus here on the earth. And my question is, how are we doing it? Because I think when we see these four Ephesians 4:11 ministries fully flowing, fully working, it's going to begin to create some dynamic cultures among us as a church. For example, the apostolic will begin to create a thriving environment in which people are believed in and can begin to reach their fullest potential. The prophetic, when it's activated, begins to create a liberating environment where people are being set free to experience God in his fullness. When you see the evangelistic released within the community, this creates a welcoming environment where people begin to discover and beginning to journey towards Christ. When you see the shepherding, pastoring role flourishing within local church, it begins to create a healing environment within which people can heal and find a really safe and secure place to belong. And then when you see the teaching gifts at play, we begin to create a learning community that creates an enabling environment where people are nurtured and equipped in God's narrative for their lives. And this just gets to be so exciting. Not when just one's playing, but when all five are playing together. And this is my encouragement, because Paul then finishes up saying that this is all coming together for the equipping of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the edifying and the building up of the body of Christ. This is such an exciting time for us to be alive in. Which one of the Ephesians 4:5 do you most represent? Which ones can you grow in more? How can we be fully alive as a church, expressing the fullness of Christ to the world around us as a church? Guys, let's go for it, and let's be the good news. I hope that's been helpful. What's been a great gift that you've ever received? Has it been useful? This is Jesus' gift to us.